process changes from project to project. Usually, I start with a big picture. So I start doing research, I start looking at images, I start looking at anything that kind of spurs something in my imagination based on the kind of characters that I will have to address. Usually when I start my process, though, I will be very, 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 very interested in the overall effect. So there are costume designers, for example, that start from the inside and then go out. I start from the outside and go in. When finding a note that hits a chord with a character, I will then usually look for further imagery. So what that means is texture, line, silhouette, feel. When I find a character and when it hits, it's a very, very, very deep feeling that I have. I am a person who actually starts from an artistic point of view and a storytelling point of view together. When that character hits, it is very unconscious. There's a gut feeling in my belly, and I go further than that. I somewhat paint a picture of the imagery that I want to create. I create a collage, I create a painting, and I create a little tableau continually about the characters that I will be dealing with. For Behind the Candelabra, the first notion that I had was actually a beautiful photograph that I found of macaroons. They were very, very beautiful. They were pastel colored, they were sherbet colored, and that was my in for both Liberace and Scott. There's a lot of photo research for Liberace and Scott, a lot of black and white imagery, but there's a lot to look at in their everyday life. A lot was chronicled, and I also had access to the archives at the Liberace Foundation. After that, looking at my palette, working with Howard Cummings, who is the production designer, he and I developed this very lush kind of pastel macaroon life. We didn't have much money to do the film, so every dollar counted. And what I found was the cheaper the fabric that there was to use, both men had 60 changes, so that's quite a lot of everyday life. That's not counting the presentation clothes, the stage clothes. I made tons of shirts, I made tons of jackets, but the cheaper the fabric, the better the look. For me, it was all about the silhouette, and that 70s silhouette is such a handsome silhouette, I feel. So that nipped-in waist, as I recall, we kind of referred to it as somewhat French in style, but the silhouette was very severe and specific for both characters. And using that palette and using the cheapest fabric you could find was the way into developing the character's everyday life. Recreating the stage costumes for Behind the Candelabra was an extreme exercise in economics. I don't ever talk like this, but economics was absolutely a very, very big factor in doing so. The original costumes, we had access to all of the original costumes. That was staggering. They were extraordinary pieces of art. And that was not only staggering, it was very intimidating. So the challenge became, how do we interpret them? What I loved very, very much about white was I have been, for my whole entire life, a very, very, very big fan of film noir. I think it's influenced everything, every choice that I've made. Working with Steven Soderbergh, it's a very, very big influence. The play of light and shadow is absolutely something that I live by. So I started to experiment with white. Sharon Stone in a white dress in Basic Instinct became an iconic dress. Her interrogation scene in a white dress, well, It made her career, I think. It was the only choice. It was the only choice. She was a Hitchcockian blonde. She felt she was Grace Kelly in a way, in some incarnation. We couldn't give anything away about who she was. It was a big secret. So white was a good disguise for her. Working with the same directors is a very, it's a luxury. And it's a luxury because you speak the same language. To know that you have a freedom with another person and a trust, it's a luxury. And it's one I'll never take for granted. I am very grateful for every single director that I've worked with more than one time. My process can start with research, it can start with imagery, it can start with an idea. It is a very, very deep process for me. It's like kind of going to the underbelly of my soul to really kind of mine what is going on in there. What do I have to do? What do I have to see? You know, my eyesight is very, very bad, and I can't see too many things. So I rely on silhouette, and I rely on shape, and I rely on feel. And with that, there's so many things that come to light, if you will, and it's all part of the same in trying to form a language, a vocabulary for what that text will need to be brought to life. I'm Ellen Mirojnick, member of 892, the Costume Designers Guild.